2026 event, which is a part of the Budapest AI Security Symposium today. Our first speaker is Mr. Balázs Nagy, CEO and President of NewPush and Rotary. Welcome. After that, you will hear the opening remarks of Professor Dr. Massimiliano Albanese. After that, Dr. Réka Szemerkényi, and at the end, Mr. Vilmos Rádi. Welcome to everyone. Enjoy your event.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. It's my pleasure to open the 2026 BAISS event. It's our fourth event and our first event jointly with the BESTalks, the Budapest Energy and Security Talks. And I'm just gonna go right into it. We are a lot of experts around the table here. I'm very excited to have a deep discussion with you guys. And jumping right into it, I believe that the real strategic deficit for the West is not access to AI models. It is our ability to adopt them securely and at speed. While China is driving systematic AI adoption at national scale, we are focused mainly on regulating AI and regulating our risk. Last March, for example, in Shenzhen, there were thousands of people lined up to install OpenClaw on their laptops, grandmothers, drivers, delivery people who were just in line to install OpenClaw. Compared to that, this is the velocity that we have to deal with, that we have to take into account. And this is why we created Project NoéMI almost exactly a year ago, 9 months ago, because this event is not exactly the same day. And we created it with George Mason University to help organizations move from fear and paralysis to fast, secure, and governed AI adoption. And with that, this is my segue to hand it over to Massimiliano Albanese, my partner in crime, with whom we created this project.
Okay. Yes, okay. So, as I said, I'm Max Albanese. I'm a professor at George Mason University. I've been at George Mason for 15 years, and I think I've known Balázs for several years, dating back when we used to be part of a IOCRC, an NSF-funded cooperative research center. And then, you know, he said Project NoéMI we created a year ago. I want to clarify that 9 months ago, it was just an idea. We had been talking for a couple of months about something like that, but the idea came to light 9 months ago in Budapest over drinks along the waterfront. And it was just an idea. It was very far from what is now. And I don't think we had a name at that point for this project. No. The name came later. And I remember vividly that I wrote the terms of that agreement on my flight back to Washington, D.C. After BAISS 2025. So went back to Mason, discussed the idea with a few folks. Of course, anything that you do at the university has to go some levels of approval, some level of blessings. So I happened to be talking with the provost about this idea, and he immediately liked it. I was very into creating more of this type of partnerships. So at that point, moved quickly, and I think we executed the agreement between NewPush and George Mason somewhere in early January. So it's incredible that now, 9 months later, we are going to announce the first few cohorts of Project NoéMI graduates. I think that's a great achievement, and I think this program has a lot of potential. And I hope we can leverage that momentum and build an even larger program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for coming to Hungary, because I think many of you have flown along many miles from across the ocean, from all around Europe. So I think this is a very special moment for all of us, and we really appreciate everybody's presence. the starting of the idea and the discussion, as you could hear from Balázs and Massimiliano, are very timely. I think we have a moment in the Euro-Atlantic community, in Europe and in Hungary, where we can and have to rethink a lot of our understanding of AI. So this is a moment of getting things back on track, or getting things on track, or getting things, corrected. Because we have done a few steps, we have introduced regulations on a European level, on a Hungarian level, in the US on the American level that have worked, and we have introduced steps and regulations that have not worked. And we have to see them, and we have to take stock, and we have to understand how to go forward. Otherwise, we're going to be in big trouble. So this is why I believe it's a very special day, and I very much appreciate everybody's presence, including the Hungarians who came also from other parts of the country, but from various institutions. And we're really honored to have an ongoing partnership with the Rotary Club, with Obuda University, with EY, with several other institutions, as well as now we're honored to have the government representatives also join our discussion. As you could see, Hungary had elections a few weeks ago, and we have a government that is being set up. So it's a very intensive time period for the new decision makers. We're honored that they are going to be still coming despite all the priorities, obviously, of setting up their own teams and their own offices. So we're going to have a little bit of a change in the program because of, obviously, their program is kind of the choke point, so we had to adjust our program to theirs, which is why what I thought of explaining to you is the importance of this discussion is really double for us Hungarians, because we do have a good possibility and impact to use these experiences, to use the institutional wealth and knowledge to really go into policy recommendations maybe, or suggestions and ideas that can be analyzed, can be taken into consideration for all of us. So the idea of this gathering today is to have a bespoke closed doors event among experts who are covering various fields and have very kind of an opportunity for a focused discussion. Within this discussion, we will use this side, from a technical point of view, this side as a kind of a panel, and then we'll shift around. So whoever is going to be speaking on the panel will have a chance to express their priorities and concerns. We want to produce a paper of recommendations, of main messages, key takeaways from our gathering. So we will take good notes of everything going on. It's also, we're online, so it's also an important way to deliver these messages. But the topics we wanted to cover today are firstly, obviously, on the kind of the key question, diagnosing the gap. That's going to be our first discussion panel. How far are we behind in comparison, or in comparison to primarily China, as we could discuss it before. We have to understand the reality of the situation. The second main issue is going to be how to rebuild the pipeline at speed. So what does that mean in policy priorities? A second major topic is going to be the capital that is needed for the catch-up, and how banks and the financial element has to be put into this. We have two other major points, one on security and sovereignty, how that is going to impact in the afternoon, and one final panel on recommendations for the future, how to go forward. In between, we will have one panel that I wanted to leave for the last, what is the situation in Hungary? So we will have that also covered in our discussion. And we're going to have the State Secretary from the Ministry of Science and Technology for research and I think research, Péter Horváth. He's going to come at 4:30. So we had to adjust the program a little bit for his keynote speech, but we're honored to have Monika Zsigri from Europe, who will join our discussion, who's on her way towards Budapest, but will join in the afternoon as well. And of course, we are very pleased to be able to have today's discussion in directly connected to the event tomorrow. We will have a whole day of discussing security policy issues from the traditional kind of NATO's perspective in the morning to energy security, and we will have also a panel on cybersecurity and AI issues embedded in the discussion tomorrow. So we wanted to use the synergies between BESTalks, the Equilibrium Institute's signature annual international conference, and the Budapest AI Symposium, which is Security Symposium, which is really one of the most intriguing initiatives for Hungary as well. So with this, I would like to welcome everybody and thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to the discussions.
I'm Vilmos. I'm here as Assistant Governor for the Budapest I region of Rotary, Hungary, and I'm representing Zoltán Szakácsor, Hungarian District Governor, so I would like to extend his greeting towards all the participants here. And I have to say that we are very proud as Rotarians that this event can be part of the Rotary events, and we can contribute to actually all 4 events, because this is the 4th one. And I'm not the only one Rotarian here, because our past governor, Julia Molnár, is also with us, and also Gábor, who is the past president of Gellért club, and Balázs is actually the current president of the same club. So I'm really happy that I'm with friends here. And I'm participating from the 2nd conference, and I have to say that having a 4th conference in a row, each one in a year, it means that there is a continued and renewed interest regarding that conference and the topics. All of the 2 previous conferences were very interesting and I think very insightful for all of the participants. And actually I'm also a participant in the NoéMI project, so I can experience firsthand that how useful it is, and I already used it in my work, and actually it helped me a lot with several tasks, and for example it saved me with one of my presentations, so thank you, Balázs. And I believe that this conference will be very informative for all of us, and I won't take more of your time, so enjoy this day.
And with this, I would suggest to start with the first panel. So we'll give the floor to Professor Alex Szalay, Dr. Emilio Martin, Gabriela Mátyás-Kollár, Paul Domjan, who will be led, the discussion will be led by Michelle Watson from the IWP, Washington, D.C. So Michelle, and dear speakers, please come over here. Yes, let us.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, Michelle Watson here from IWP, the Institute of World Politics in Washington, D.C. It's my honor to moderate this panel this morning. What we'd like to do is we'd like to get started. We're going to go in order of the agenda, and I'm not going to give the bio for these very impressive people. It is contained in the agenda. But when I start, let's start with Professor Dr. Alex Szalay. Szalay, pardon. And if each of you can speak for maybe 5 minutes, and ideally one great key point and one great recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to talk a little bit so I'm looking at the whole AI from a university perspective. So I'm a professor at Johns Hopkins, and I'm very involved with our AI effort. So in the US, we see an insane pace of competition. So in the industry, spending essentially $1 trillion range investments on building new data centers. At the same time, there is an increasing societal anxiety. So people are afraid how this will change the job market. Some of the hyperscalers are already starting to lay off programmers, and there was kind of a panic if a company doesn't cut its workforce, then it doesn't demonstrate its involvement in AI. At the same time, there are rumors that one of the big companies actually encouraged their workforce to do more vibe coding. So there was an internal contest which programmer burns more tokens. And then at the end of the month, they got the bill for Anthropic, and it was $500 million. So they had to scale back afterwards. And the benefits are not, after 6 months in perspective, it's not clear whether it's actually the investment in the tokens is paying off. At the same time, $1 token income for Anthropic or OpenAI actually costs them $2.50. So they are burning money to gain market share. And so there's an insane race which is not self-sustainable. Okay, there is a lack of trusted data. So the core of the kind of the trusted common core for these big language models is of the order of somewhere between 5 and 10 petabytes. So it's not that large. And then the rest of the data is very dirty and with kind of dubious copyright issues associated with it. So which also cannot go on very much longer. The lawsuits are starting to emerge. So academia is on the periphery of this, unfortunately. So partly this federal funding in academia has been cut by half, approximately. So the major research universities, the admission of graduate students is about 50% compared to last year. So Caltech just announced, Johns Hopkins is at the same thing. So basically there's so much insecurity in federal funding that the faculty and the university administration is actually reducing the guidelines to the individual departments. So the federal government is trying to establish some control. So the US started, the Department of Energy started the Genesis project when they realized that it would be nice if the government could build based upon the national so basically the national laboratories, so Argonne and Oak Ridge, etc., which have supercomputers. So they are going to get Argonne is going to get a fantastic new machine, but they don't have the workforce. So now at the same time, while they are cutting our graduate student funding, they actually want us to hire more graduate students. So they started the Genesis program where they give universities funding to hire graduate students, but they want them to graduate much faster than that normal trend. So they want an accelerated training, but they also launched the program in such a way that they are using AI to review the proposals. And so right now it's not clear whether it's focused enough or not. What's happening? Hardware trends. So there is again this crazy rush for more power, and this is creating societal backlashes. And it is driving up local electricity prices up. So Baltimore City just announced a ban on data centers exceeding 10 megawatts. So luckily the one that we are building is going to be 6.5, so we are below the limit. But it is going to, I think this is going to persist for several years to come. The hard disk and SSD prices tripled, so did memory prices. So the server I could have bought basically a few years ago for $200,000, so with 8 GPUs. Today it is way above $500,000. So the companies are also, individual companies are starting their own chip development efforts in order to drive the power requests down. So they are trying to create inference chips, which don't do training, but they can do inference much cheaper and run the token engines. Also, NVIDIA released the DGX Spark. I don't know if you have seen this. Basically, I can hold it in my hand. It's $4,000. It used to be $4,000. Now it's about $5.5. But it has 200 million. It can run 200 billion weight networks, and it's really quite incredible. Okay. So what we see in terms of what the the AI companies are doing is a level of diversification. So Cloud Mythos was the first one that had a special target, and it had all the cybersecurity tools. It was followed in a few weeks by OpenAI, which released GPT-Rosalind, named after Rosalind Franklin, who was the graduate student who did the DNA sequencing. And this is specialized in medicine and genomics. And it doesn't know as much about classical music and art and so on. And this is going to be sold only to big pharma for drug design. And so they are trying to shrink the size of the models, and that cuts the training time and how you can deliver, but adding specialized features. 2 weeks later, Claude Legal came out, which then learned all the data for the legal profession. And this is targeted at the law firms in the US, which is a huge market. So this is, again, not going to be probably generally available. And then I think last week, Claude Science was released. And apparently Claude Science, so these language models used to be at the level of a graduate student for science last year. This year they are at the level of PhD scientists. The claim is that next year they will reach the Nobel Prize level discoveries. And John Jumper, the guy who won the Nobel Prize for AlphaFold, just moved to Anthropic. And here the trend is to use science data where it's much more provable and trustworthy. This is used for developing more reasoning capabilities in the models. So this is a new trend to augment basically the language corpus with genuine data. And China is actually, China is releasing actually its models and making them open, and they are typically trying to do smaller models. But the open model space at this point is largely dominated by China, so its Quan is taking over. It's interesting that a lot of the Chinese graduate students who are currently in the US, some of them return to China, but the bulk of them still want to stay, actually. So I know it, from my postdocs. And so it's not clear that actually the Chinese students want to migrate back en masse into China. Europe is kind of in an awkward position, so because a lot of the early work, so DeepMind, Google, Oxford, Cambridge, UCL was leading actually a lot of the science applications of AI in the world, but they, I think, lack the big machines. France just got a big boost by Yann LeCun moving back to France and leaving Meta. So he's starting a whole new enterprise there. Germany has Europe's largest supercomputer, the Jupyter machine in Jülich. But it's not clear how widely that can be used. And the Swiss have also a large supercomputer, which they used to develop, I think, the first of these larger sovereign models. where a lot of the training corpus included Switzerland-specific data sets. And I think these are actually very interesting trends, and this is probably something that Hungary should be thinking about doing, except the only question is how can Hungary have the hardware and acquire hardware, for example. So anyway, and then really at the universities in the US, so just summarizing and closing up, so we are never going to exceed basically the 1,000 to 4,000 GPU limit. Simply it's too much money, and it has to be reinvested every year as the machines become obsolete. So we have to be building essentially on augmenting smaller foundation models and specific, so probably stay with models that can run on 1,000 GPU cluster. We need to figure out what to do with the graduate students. And there was a paper published last year by the Simons Foundation in New York called the Denario model. And it was an agentic network. The first agent was basically conversing with the scientist and understanding the scientific problem in plain English. The next agent collected the data. The third agent performed the analysis, and the fourth agent wrote the paper in the appropriate format for that domain. And they demonstrated it from astronomy to medicine, fluid dynamics, and there was a fourth one, probably geosciences. And it had some errors, but it was at the level of a first-year graduate student. The computational cost was a few $100s per paper. A graduate student today costs me about $100,000 per year. And it performed roughly the work of annual work of a graduate student in about 1 day. So that's what we are looking at. But if we don't train, so from my personal perspective, it would be easier just to use AI than hiring graduate students and expect them to help my research. At the same time, this cuts off the pipeline for the future. So how do we figure out this trade-off? And we are today still filling the heads of the graduate students with a lot of data that they can recall, and the AI models can already recall that data much faster and much better. So how should we train our graduate students? And probably the answer is critical thinking, integrity, and some of those ethical features that are very hard to quantify and put our arms around it. And we are all scratching our heads how to do this.
Thank you. That was very enlightening, and appreciate your perspective. Next, we actually have on the agenda Dr. Emilio Martin from KEYNOTE in London. However, he's unable to join us today, but we're representing KEYNOTE is also Paul Damian. And so we'll have you go next and represent both yourself and Dr. Martin. Thank you.
Does that work? Good. Yeah, Emilio will be with us tomorrow, and we'll go into more detail, particularly around cybersecurity issues with AI and how that interacts with the energy grid. But thank you very much for having me here today. I'm glad that this year we now have the AI Symposium along with the BESTalks, because fundamentally it's one system. We manufacture cars and tanks out of steel, but we manufacture AI out of energy. And Professor Szalay took us through the cost both to the corporate and to the investors in Anthropic and OpenAI of token maxing. And that cost is largely driven, at least from an operational cost perspective, by energy. So as we're burning through this cash, we're burning this cash to build energy, to create the energy to build intelligence with. And that means that we really need to treat these topics together. So in the spirit of diagnosing the gap, part of the gap is a gap around research, and I'm very pleased as someone living for 25 years in the United Kingdom at the role the UK has played in fundamental AI research. But there's a research gap, there's certainly a scaling gap, but there's also an ability to deliver energy gap. And fundamentally, if we can't close that gap, we're not going to be able, as Europeans, to compete with American or Chinese AI, whereas both the US and China have come up with solutions that are not viable in Europe. And in the US, that solution is predominantly, as I'm sure you're aware, behind the meter natural gas. So everything from small power plants to engines to airplane turbines being repurposed to operate inside of data centers with natural gas, which is not something that would ever really be approved in the European Union. And in China, it's a level of scale of build out of solar and batteries that again would not be possible from a permitting perspective in the EU. We simply don't have the willingness to build at that scale to deliver that amount of power into compute. And that means that we're not going to be able to solve the AI energy problem with brute force, which fundamentally is what the US and China are both doing. Instead, we need to think about how can a successful European AI industry, a successful European data center industry, enable the energy system so that the two become complementary instead of the model that we have today in both the US and China of how do we maximize the energy production that we need in order to drive AI as a pure energy consumer. In Europe, if AI is going to be successful, it has to be an active participant in the energy system. So what does that mean? I think it can go in a couple of different directions. On the one hand, we have in Europe, and we saw this, I was speaking with David yesterday about Spain as an example, we saw this very clearly there. We see it in Germany with the huge amounts, trillions of euros of wind that Germany curtails every year in the North Sea. We do the same in the UK, Poland does the same, et cetera. We have significant energy resources that aren't being utilized efficiently in the system, and we have a system which is under increasing threat of stability because of the dominance on renewable resources. So in that situation, can AI data centers move from being inflexible consumers of energy to active participants who can move their consumption up and down in order to match what we're producing instead of demand what they need at an instantaneous moment? You know, can we create a policy environment that encourages particularly training to happen in areas that are energy rich, as opposed to having to move that energy long distances, which while technically feasible is often not feasible from a political and a permitting perspective. And then at the same time, one of the biggest constraints on our energy system is the fact that we operate it in extremely conservative engineering boundaries, because we don't see it well, we don't see it in real time, we don't understand it well. And as a result, we have these very conservative engineering assumptions to ensure that that system is stable and secure at all times. You know, in AI, we now have a tool that enables us to ingest in real time vast amounts of heterogeneous data to be able to start to challenge some of those conservative assumptions. You know, can we use artificial intelligence tools to see our energy network in much greater granularity, to see moment by moment the capacity we have and actually deliver a lot more power through the network that we've already invested in. And we'll talk some tomorrow about how we're doing that in the distribution network at Inoda, but we're just a small part of the range of solutions that are going to be needed in order to bring the flexibility we need to deliver AI. So I would argue, if we're taking stock of the position we are today, these are some of the really fundamental problems that we need to solve if we're going to have real sovereign AI in Europe. You know, how do we deliver the energy to power that? How do we think much more creatively about doing that in a way that is realistic in Europe instead of trying and perhaps failing to follow the models of the US and China? How do we think creatively about where we locate training versus inference in order to make the best use of already heavily taxed power systems? And how do we use the capabilities AI has given us in order to make the most targeted and smartest use of the infrastructure we have to maximize the value of what we have? Thank you very much.
I thought it was interesting, one of the things you were saying about can Europe provide energy almost like on demand? So not providing or scaling too much or too little. So would you say it's kind of like, how can you realistically provide on-demand energy?
Can we do 30 seconds of physics?
Please, yes.
All right, we'll do 30 seconds of physics. So part of Nikola Tesla's brilliance, the Romanian inventor, not the car company, was to realize that you can distribute energy extremely efficiently if you distribute it in very, very narrow boundaries. So in Europe, that means a frequency of 50 hertz all the time. I assume most of you are not electrical engineers, but there'll be lots of economists in the room who appreciate that price is a function of supply and demand. Frequency works exactly the same way. So if we have too much supply, the frequency rises, too little, it falls. We have to hit 50 hertz all the time. You know, the collapse in Spain was triggered by a few minutes of deviation below 49. My home state of Texas, 700 people died when we went to went down by about 1.5%. So we have to hit that all the time. In a fossil fuel world, that's trivial. You know, there's a big meter in the power station. It says what the frequency is. If it starts to fall, you shovel more coal. If it goes too high, you shovel less coal. But that frequency isn't simply governed by generation. It's an interaction between generation and load. And you know, realistically in the European power system, if we want a secure power system, and I would argue even if they weren't good for the climate, our only solution to reduce reliance on international fossil fuel prices is to produce domestically, and all we have to produce domestically is renewables to a large extent. So we have to make that work. That means that we're not going to be able to have a model in which I can consume the energy I want when I want to. We have to have a model in which if I'm a large load like a data center, I'm providing system stability services. You know, I'm moderating my demand to match generation to keep the frequency stable, and I'm getting paid for doing so. And you know, the money is probably not very relevant to Google or Anthropic, but if you say actually, I'll be allowed to connect that data center 3 months earlier if I offer flexibility, that's very valuable to those partners. So there really is a creative set of public policy solutions that could work in Europe that are uniquely European, that leverage Europe's regulatory superpower status to solve this problem differently.
Seems a bit of a delay on these mics. Okay, so next we have the impressive Gabriela Matas. Sorry, I've been practicing, but I never get it right. Kolar, who's the head of AI at Shiva Force, INSEAD, Executive MBA. So please, Gabrielle, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here today, and I will share my insights, which are coming from two lenses. One is that I'm leading a practice of an IT company which introduces AI solutions to our partners in the region and in Hungary, and that gives us a very interesting insight into what clients are interested, what their questions are, and what the boundaries are there. And the other lens is my global network within INSEAD, which gives me opportunities to be there and hear about the proceedings there from our distinguished professors. And I had the opportunity last month to be at the AI forum at INSEAD in Paris, where Jan LeCun was talking as well, as Alex mentioned him, and he also shared interesting insights. And Professor Philippe Aghion was there, who was one of the Nobel laureates last year. So we really got the insights into what's happening at the frontiers. But before that, I would step back a little and examine where the AI race is going globally. Because I can see it's not just a race which is happening at one place, but in many different areas and domains. One is the business competitiveness. So everyone is looking for AI's capabilities to increase the business abilities, to enhance the efficiency, and they are looking for that sort of multipliers that AI can provide them. There is also a question of the cultural influence, like who is using the models, who is training that with what sort of data, and how we can make sure that Europe is represented there with the right weights, and also the European way of thinking regarding diversity, equity, and such questions. So where those are in this question. The open source innovation is also a large question, which is directed by manifold the US companies and the Chinese endeavors as well. and Europe's place is smaller right now, so what we can do there. And the national defense capability is a large issue too. I would allude to the Stanford AI Index from 26, that's quite new, and that described that actually the Chinese models have now the capabilities of the best US frontier models as well. So they have just reached just a 2.7% gap in capabilities where they were measured against each other. So they are face to face actually. And regarding the 25 model releases, 50 of them came from the US, 30 from China, and just one from France and one from Great Britain. So that shows also how far we are behind those two big players in Europe. And we also heard it already that China has a much larger set of the STEM PhD candidates, and 77,000 of PhD candidates are coming out of every year of the Chinese markets. And in the US, that's just 40,000. So where Europe could be in this race, and Europe was always very proud of the scientific capabilities, so that might be an area where we can still have our hold and be present. Regarding the capital, US is the strongest with $286 billion investment and 5,400 data centers, which is like nowhere represented in Europe any close. And the investment portfolios are also in favor of the US models and less of the Europeans. And actually what is alarming, that the trend is that the investors are even disinvesting from the European AI models. So that might be something which worth some further thoughts too. And regarding sovereignty, that's an important question. Like, who is training the data? Whose data is trained? And if we are using our data, then which is the model that's being trained by that data? So how we keep what we know and what we learned in the EU, so how we keep it within our boundaries. And I would mention also the EU Commission paper, which mentioned that just recently it was just 13.5% of the European corporations which are using AI notably. So we are quite far behind in this regard too. So what can we do? It can be manifold, but I would mention Philippe Agion's take on it, because his Nobel laureate came from the model which examined how innovation can be done in a way that it disrupts the old model but builds the new model. And he had a very positive side on it, because he stated that even though AI is such a disruptive model which requires to pull down the previous walls and build the new ones, but actually his model shows that it is just bringing more opportunities. So we need to govern it in a way that also helps people to understand that with the use of AI, we might see quite large differences in where the workforce went the previous year and years, and where workforce is heading next, and what are the new capabilities. And he is very positive on that. Innovation is going to create those opportunities rather than dismantle, but definitely the first is dismantling the previous model and then creating the new ones. And that would require thoughtful thinking of it. And what I can see from the AI practice, talking to corporates which are building their AI governance models, they are looking into how they could have the best approach regarding especially the human AI hybrid models, the agentic models, because even the highly regulated European environment, this is a little bit falling behind. So we don't have the detailed models on how to do it right, and that would be something which is really important. So not just the human in the loop, but how the whole structure is set up and how we are going to make it really work. So that requires a good leadership and a very wide level of involvement from many parts of the society as well, so that they know what's coming up and how to prepare for that, what are the skills and what are the approaches that are going to be needed to succeed in this new environment. So more or less that's are my points, and one more, I would emphasize that the scientific capabilities of Europe can be something that is really important to be taken care of.
Thank you, Gabriella. So making some points as our panelists are speaking, I want to make a bit of a summary, and then we'd very much like to open it up for questions and then discussion. So couple of points, and I've delineated like where is China leading in the AI race, where is the US leading, and where is Europe leading. So just a couple of data points on each. China leads on large-scale AI adoption. We know they have 1.4 billion people, and China has been capturing data and utilizing this data for many years. So they lead the world in this. They also lead the world in AI patent filings. Basically, in 2024, China had about 300,000 patent filings. The US had 65,000, so huge, and then Europe, 22,000. China also leads in the volume of scientific research papers. We're talking about the scientific part in Europe. It's quite significant. Something in the order of almost 24,000 papers in 2024, the last year we had this data. And the next being the EU with 10,000 research papers, and the US actually trailed the EU in this with 6.3 thousand in 2024. But also, and significantly, China is leading on physical robotics, low-cost AI models, and the rapid deployment of these low-cost models. Yeah? So, also, China has significant strengths and is highly competitive, if not leading in the following. Again, because of their 1.4 billion people and the deployment of AI for many years, they have the most significant data ecosystem. Their manufacturing capacity is a core strength for them. They have the world's largest manufacturing base, industrial robotics, their autonomous logistics, maybe not leading, but very closely aligned with the US in this space. And of course, their factory automation is leading. And then that brings us to the point about China's scale. We know that China excels in scaling innovation and has done so with many technologies before AI. They have a large AI talent pipeline. They have a high adoption rate of their 1.4 billion people in AI apps. And of course, they have a very large domestic market within their own country. And the government coordination in China is, with their civil-military fusion, is second to no other country in the world. They have a stated and a strong national AI strategy, and they have a significant infrastructure deployment that is funded and pushed by the government. And they have an integrated industrial policy. Where does the US lead? And I think arguably innovation. I think we would agree AI world, US leads AI in innovation. Also in the AI model development, that is the companies like OpenAI, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Anthropic, Claude, and Mythos. These model developments created in the US lead the world. The US leads in the high-end chip design, GPU innovation, private funding. Your venture capitalist and entrepreneurship in AI is led by the US. The top-tier software tools, cloud computing. Defense AI is I think, very neck and neck in the race between the US and China. But our defense technology ecosystem is highly integrated. And our research universities, as Professor Szalay said, is second to none. But when you look at not just these individually, but what makes, I think, US strong in this space is that our ecosystem it combines all of these. So there is an integration of the research excellence with access to the capital and the global talent and the startup environment. The US has done a good job of integrating all of these and harnessing these for the growth of our AI. That brings us to the EU. And I like, Gabriella, what you said in terms of the governance. I think the EU, or in Europe, does not lead perhaps in cloud computing capacity or in the creation of large AI models. However, I think a key strength, EU for many years has shown a focus on, I think, what we would call more strict consumer safety regulations. GDPR, obviously. We have now, I think, the first and the most significant AI governance has come out of the EU. And I think this leads us to, when we look at responsible AI regulations and guardrails, as we talk about it, EU has done an excellent job in leading this. And I think the rest of the world is looking at this closely. However, one of the things that I look at as an American and as focused on technology, one thing that we hope the EU doesn't focus too much on these regulatory frameworks at the expense of innovation. And Gabriel, you made that point beautifully. So I was thinking, can the EU become a superpower? I think absolutely, yes. And as Paul said, not by replicating what the US or China is doing. The EU needs their own distinctive, unique strategy and implementation of AI. So listening to our panel here and speaking with some of the other experts yesterday and today, what are the 4 areas that I think the EU can lead, and I think you're on the track for, aside from trusted AI. So it's like you can trust the AI in Europe because of the governance, and a secure AI, but also think healthcare AI, not just the pharma, but I see EU, Europe is leaning more and more in healthcare AI, and cross-border standards. Europe is doing this very well, certainly better than the US and better than China. So I think that's another opportunity for a distinctive leadership initiative for the EU. And then I just, in closing, one of my other thoughts was the AI leaders of the future. They're going to belong to nations that build, not just create a technology or excel at fast adopting. History doesn't remember fast adopters so much as builders, builders of institutions, builders of standards, builders of systems, ecosystems. So countries that build the following, I believe, are really going to lead in this next AI generation. So build the best talent, who is building the best infrastructure, the best alliances, the most trusted institutions, the most resilient economies, the most secure ecosystems. I think that these 6 elements adopted by leadership, as Gabriela said, that you need leadership in these countries to push through the AI strategy. And I think there's a lot of strategies that don't have good leadership. And I think there's some great leaders out there that is looking for a strong AI strategy. So those are my summary points of where we are looking at the leaderboard, if you will, China, US, and Europe. So what we'd like to do now is open it up to questions. We have a very impressive panel here, and I look forward to your questions. And then, but also if you just have comments, you want to make comment on some of the things that, if you agree, fantastic. If you disagree, hey, that's even better, because we're going to spark more dialogue. All right, thank you. Yes.
It's much better. Sorry. So thank you for for our panelists for these insightful remarks. I want to ask a question from kind of a little bit from the outside, from the US's understanding, and from the inside as well, from the Europeans. So I have a feel that more often than not, the European decision makers are not aware of the weight of the problem and of the severity. And they think like they have time at their hands. It's like a problem that is looming, but okay, long distance, long time, no rush. I don't have that sense. I think it's very immediate, very urgent. So if there is any concrete suggestion that you would have in mind on for the Europeans, how to get to those leaders that Michelle was speaking about, the right leaders, the smart leaders, the smart decision makers, what do we need to focus on? Because Europe, of course, in research, we're dispersed. You know, there's research going on in France. We're not sharing that with the research going on in Germany. There's research going on in Spain, but who cares? I mean, so it's, I mean, a lot of effort lost. Full stop.
So there was a book by Eric Schmidt and Helen Kissinger and Craig Mundy called Genesis, which, you know, I got goosebumps. So it talks about the geopolitical consequences of AI and the pace of evolution of AI, and you know the hypothesis. So, for example, whether the tools enabled by AI are actually preferring or biasing towards autocracy or democracy. So how can how can it be used, or the scenario that, you know, one of the superpowers is within few weeks of reaching AGI, the general intelligence, then should the other party actually at that point launch a preemptive strike? Because it can easily lead to world dominance. I think it would wake up a lot of people if they actually read that book.
That's a great recommendation, and that's a great book as well. Yeah?
Sorry, just one thing I think that's important about this as well is, as we think about a European strategy for this, Europe is very good at regulating. It's very good at doing lots of little things. This is not, there's a regulatory contribution, but it's not a regulatory problem. And Europe doesn't have the resources to do lots of little things. So we have to think about how to do this in an organized fashion. And I think in different ways, both Professor Szalay and I alluded to, I think, one of the key questions that has to be answered here as well, which is what Europe are we talking about? The best AI research in Europe is happening in Britain, which is not part of the EU. The supercomputer research is happening in Switzerland, which is not part of the EU. Excess dispatchable power is in Norway, which is not part of the EU. Potentially it's in North Africa as well. So, what is is the EU willing to think about this as a pan-European project or as an EU project? Because it will be a lot harder as an EU project.
Excellent point. Thank you, Paul. Gabriella?
I think there are already good so I think there are already good initiatives like the Project Tapestry, which ensures that the data stays within Europe, and it's a federated training of the models. And we would need more of these and more alliances, especially in the scientific era. So I think that joint sources in the scientific frontier, because that's exactly my experience as well, what Alex Szalay mentioned, that the models can be used very efficiently to bring the scientific capabilities to life. And we should really focus on making it visible and turn it to the usability side as well. And agreeing with Réka on her comment on that maybe we don't see the urgency, but it's actually there. And one of my fears is that if the agentic Okay, because I didn't just see the light. So with the agentic systems, it can easily go to a complexity level when it's really hard to see like what is happening behind. So how are we governing this? And how are we making sure that it also takes into the picture of the whole society, because when the agentic systems are becoming very efficient, it means that we need less of the workforce, and it leads to like who we are hiring. Do we have the younger generations involved enough? And if there are larger and larger layoffs because that, so what happens to those people? I think that's a very important question, and within Europe, it's one of the primary questions, like how the whole society benefits from it. So I would rather leave those questions open, but be mindful of that those are getting covered.
Thank you, Gabriella. Excellent points. I think we had a question. Did you have a question here? Please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you very much for the floor. My name is Gábor Dobos. I represent a Budapest-based small think tank called Prometheus Society. You took stock of the capabilities of the EU, China, and the United States. I would like to add, of course, there's of course the joke of reusable bottle caps, where the EU is no doubt leading. But I would, on a more serious note, I would like to add semiconductor manufacturing, which is the backbone of the whole AI industry. And Europe has ASML, and only Europe has a company that can manufacture these EUV machines, and nobody else in the world. Secondly, I would also add space capabilities, which do not seem relevant at first sight, but if if the United States will sooner or later really move data centers into space, we can ask questions about how economically viable this is, but certainly it is only the US and only SpaceX that has the capability to do this. If Starship flies according to the plans. But I didn't ask for the floor because of this. I'd like to ask 2 questions instead about EU, or rather not EU, but more European strategy. One is about models. So there is only one European AI model that can keep the pace with the Americans and the Chinese. Or we're not so certain if it can, because the last release that they've done for a foundation model was a year ago or so. So this is the French Mistral. So obviously our strategy depends on a large degree on what we think about the future of Mistral. So I would be curious to hear your opinion about this, whether Mistral can keep this gap, or even catch up, or what do you think the future of Mistral will be? The second is I want to go a bit deeper into the AI data center analysis. A good proxy of the computing capacity of the data centers is power requirement. So now most of the time, at least in the press, it's not measured in flops, but rather in power draw. So I looked into the numbers. In the United States, currently there are 36 data centers, AI data centers, that are larger than 100 megawatts. In Europe, there are 3. The largest American data center has 1.4 million GPUs or GPU equivalents, and has a power draw of 950 megawatts. Whereas the greatest aspiration of the European Union is to build within 5 years 5 data centers that we are calling giga centers, which would be the size of 150 megawatts. So this is the size that the United States already has, some 40 already today. So the question is, do you think that EU will, or Europe rather, will sometime wake up or sleepwalk into the 2030s? And part of this is that whether you think this could be done on the EU level or rather in an intergovernmental collaboration. Thank you.
Talk about data center power to start. Let's start with data center power. And it kind of relates to the point about Mistral. You know, there's a fundamental strategic choice that Europe needs to make, which is it going to bet on a single provider of European foundation models or not? And you know, perhaps Professor Szalay wants to comment on this, whether that's a wise choice. Certainly nothing Mistral has done suggests to me that it's a wise choice. If Europe is betting on a single model, whether it's Mistral or something else, then you don't need the same level of duplication in data centers. On the other hand, so maybe Europe can get away with less capacity. Not the small amount of capacity it's building, but less capacity. On the other hand, part of the reason the US is leading is because of competition among the AI producers and among the hyperscalers. And you know, a European model in which we designate 550 megawatt data centers and call that the European AI infrastructure is one which Europe will ultimately fail. So I think the question becomes, how does Europe enable data center development to happen much faster? And I think the, what we see with this current strategy of building a small number of medium-sized data centers and declaring victory is kind of often a typical European response to American innovation of trying to do the same thing on a smaller scale and declare victory. And that's obviously not going to work. So I think Europe really is at a strategic crossroads where there are 3 options. One is try to put everything into a single European model and compete, and maybe that will work, and I think probably not. The second is try to adopt a US or China style strategy on a smaller scale and hope that will work, and that probably won't. And the third is figure out how does Europe's AI industry live alongside the US and China? What are the opportunities to take foundation models that are developed in the US and China and develop them and customize them and apply them for inference in Europe where we don't need the same scale of power? Because I simply struggle to see how without a fundamentally different attitude to the development of power infrastructure, Europe is ever going to be able to compete with the amount of power that's being deployed into AI in the US.
This is an excellent point, because one of the basic assumptions that we possibly all are making is that at the very moment we are in a linear race towards who will be the superpower in the AI models. I beg to differ. Let us assume for a moment it is not a linear race, but it is a multifold race. And if you come out third in that race, and Europe is about to be, and no, Mistral is not the solution for a lot of things. A very nice try, very good outcomes, and they have all my sympathy, but this is no competition for the large scale models. And there is the but. Somebody tried to limit the use of AI models to a certain nation, and it failed. Why did it fail? It failed because the knowledge is globally available and it needs to be fed globally. So if you own a large-scale language model, to what extent do you own it? So that is what I think a question that is worth thinking about. That's the one thing. The second thing is, if the Europeans would be smart enough to understand that language models are available on the one hand side, and to make a sort of an economically smart use of it, maybe in the use of ontology with knowledge graphs, maybe in the use of neurosymbolic AI. And yes, it is true, for all of them, you need a sort of an LLM, but just a sort of an LLM. You're not bound to a product or to a certain way of doing that LLM. And this, of course, gives leeway to maneuver. And Paul, you're perfectly right with that. To try to compete in the race about being the superpower in LLMs, that's done already. And I believe that's decided. I might be wrong, but that is done. But to find a smart place in between of that and being on top of certain areas of knowledge. You mentioned, Michelle, the health sector. There may be a few others that are niche at the very moment, but might become relevant not only for Europe, but also on a global scale. So being European, of course, I have to say, not all is lost. There are pockets of knowledge that are very, very interesting. And the funny thing is, they are small. All of them are small. So what Paul mentioned about the power usage and the necessity of grid availability and is true, but to a certain extent survival relevant, because these attempts are indeedly small and divided. So it might come out.
So right now we are talking about the LLMs, and LLM models are just part of the AI usage, and there are different attempts to use AI differently, and there are trials on AI usage for a more energy efficiency way, which is in some segments can be much more usable than the LLMs. The LLM is very much language dependent and language based, but what about the models which are beyond that? And Jan Lekun's vote also went for a new type of model, the world models, which would be a better representations of the real world, because now the LLMs know about everything that is written or spoken, but they don't know whether this table surface would be hard or soft. So kind of new type of grounding would be needed. And actually, I think we are just at a stage right now, and there are different horizons opening up. So I would not limit the thinking to the LLMs.
Yesterday's New York Times had two really interesting and relevant articles. One was by Eric Schmidt, who talked again about he had another trip to China, and he always, every few months, he reflects on what he saw there. And what he pointed out is that besides China actually deploying AI much better in the industrial setting than any other country, the government consciously tries to slow down a little bit the pace of the evolution there in order to be able to retain a little bit more control. And that is a delicate balance that I think Europe will also have to walk. That how much can you actually establish a regulatory framework without crippling the pace of development, but at the same time do enough that you dampen the instabilities that are arising in the American system. The other article was comparing the current AI development to the development of the atomic bomb that happened in Los Alamos and in a few national laboratories under controlled conditions. And he said that imagine that the bomb had been developed by a bunch of private companies in competition. We would live in a very different world today. So these are kind of the things to look at. And the last bit to, why Europe is very different from the US in its cultural diversity. So that there's a much more homogeneous culture in the United States and in the English-speaking world, I would say. So,
can I just come on one quick point on that, which I think is fascinating about the atomic bomb analogy. So, we often use the analogies like the Blitz in the UK, or the Los Alamos project and the Sprint for the Bomb, or the moonshot for these types of challenges. And they're terrible analogies because those were totally uneconomical programs that only needed to work once with limited success. In contrast, building out AI, the energy transition, these are, and it's not a criticism of you, Professor, but these are infrastructures that need to work forever at scale. So I think what I find so fascinating about that analogy is arguably there are two versions of the atomic era we could think about. There's a publicly run one and a privately run one, and we got the publicly run one. And the publicly run one kept control of the atomic bomb in a different way, but it also meant that the public sector developed nuclear power at a terrible pace. And you wonder what our world would be like if nuclear science, including nuclear power, had begun in the private sector. So I think we need to think about these as not necessarily goods or bads, but complicated trade-offs. We're getting much, much, much deeper, much faster deployment of AI into the economy because it's driven by the private sector. That gives us security challenges we need to manage, but it also gives us some huge benefits.
Thank you, Paul. I also want to just make one point to will Europe wake up and compete in this AI data center implementation and use. I've been part of a couple of projects where harnessing nuclear power to fuel AI data centers is something that is very real. We saw where Microsoft bought 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor facilities and then retrofitting it to power Microsoft's next-gen AI data center. But to that point, we're seeing SMRs, small modular reactors, that it's nascent, but this could be a very real opportunity for Europe to use SMRs more prolifically and have the source of power that they need to implement and to create more AI data centers. So I'd be on the lookout for this happening. I know there are a number of companies that are talking to some of the US companies about implementing these capabilities in Europe. There's one with, right now with, well, I'm pretty sure it's Amazon Web Services, but it's still in discussion, to implement exactly this in the UK.
Conference for those who are going. I certainly know Rob Ruddock from Syntos Green Energy is going to be there, and they're probably the furthest at commercial deployment of SMRs in Europe, with projects in this country, the UK, Poland. I have no economic interest, but it's a great piece of, so if you want to explore that, it's worth talking to Rob tomorrow. Syntos Green Energy, they have the European license for the Hitachi WRX 300, the one that's being built in Ontario.
I believe we have another question, Mr. Logan West.
Good morning. My name is Logan West, and I'm a doctoral student at the Institute of World Politics. My question is to Ms. Matash. You mentioned earlier how cultural influence data does play a role in the competition, and how European data is not getting a very significant presence as of now. Two-part question. One, how significant would you say that is to, how significant of an issue would you say that is to European policymakers? And second, when it comes to the cooperation, how much European data is able to make it into those cooperations?
It's a significant problem because just recently there was a paper about that the AI models seem to be especially blind to the exactly the Central Eastern European data. So I would need to look it up, but the finding was that as it wasn't trained on Central Eastern European data, so it is not including that part of the world significantly left out from the model. So that's an interesting question. And your other question was about the Chinese models?
When it comes to cooperation elements, one of which Hungary has a lot of cooperation platforms with China, is there an opportunity for European countries to have its data implemented, or is China mostly just working off of its own data?
I think it would be possible, and working together can open new opportunities. So I think it's just a decision of where and what segments we are working together, because especially in the space of robotics, China is very advanced. So that would be an important opportunity to learn much more about that, and maybe China can profit from the European capabilities as well.
Thank you, Logan. Thank you, Gabriella. Are there any other questions? I think we have time for one more. If anyone would like to submit a question or a comment. Yes, Balázs.
Well, maybe we will have time throughout the day to discuss that, but we could maybe kick it off because, Alex, you mentioned the sovereign AI and the question of the data center, the energy and all that. So maybe if we could have a little bit, just an introductory thought as we go through the day. I think that's going to be an important theme.
About a year ago, I was back here in Budapest at a meeting which scientists were meeting artists, and so it was about contemporary art and how science is influencing it. And during this, there was a lady who is associated, I think, with the National Gallery of Arts or something, and she was talking about the importance to actually make the AI language models or foundation models aware of the particular country's collection, the cultural heritage, because otherwise, if we allow, for example, Google or some of the hyperscalers just to scan a superficial cross-section of that corpus, then very easily false facts are become commonplace, and then other language models are going to then follow that trend and that corpus. So it's in each country's own interest to actually digitize its own cultural heritage. And make it part of the world model. And I didn't realize really up to that point how important this is for the survival of a culture, in the age of digital AI all over the world. So
I think it's also a great example of what we need to be so clear about what we mean by sovereign AI. The example Alex has just given doesn't require any computational capacity in Europe. It requires awareness of Hungarian cultural heritage. By contrast, there are some definitions of sovereign AI that are exclusively about computational capacity. So I think we just need to be very clear about that.
Yep. Thank you, Paul. Alex, did you want to make another comment?
Yeah, so this is really about assembling a natural corpus of trusted data about our cultural heritage, a concentrated effort. So.
Excellent summary. Okay, if there are not any other questions, comments, Okay, well, we thank you very much for your time and your attention, your consideration. I think this is a very, very august panel. I know I learned a few important data points myself, so I hope each of you did as well. Okay. Anything else? Réka, we're good? Okay, thank you.
Bre. Ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing with our panel 1, which is rebuilding the pipeline at speed. Our distinguished speakers will be Mr. Anyan Ranganathan, Professor Dr. Alex Szalay, Mrs. Julia Molnár, Mr. Milan Balázs, and Dr. Péter Galambos. Our moderator for this panel will be Mr. Vilmos Rádi. Enjoy, please.
So today we are fortunate enough to have leaders from academia, innovation and civil society. And it's a great opportunity to discuss how far is extending the need for AI talents, and it's accelerating continuously, actually faster than education traditionally can keep track with it. I'm a visiting lecturer at Pászbány University, and we are also providing a micro degree for law students regarding AI law. And there's a competition between the law universities, law faculties, that how early we should start the education of the students. Sometimes probably in the first year or the second semester during the university. But I guess the need for AI talents in informatics and mechanics is far more greater than in the legal capacity. So, what do you think? How can you accelerate the speed of educating new talents without compromising the quality of the education? So, probably first, ladies first, Julia Molnár, what do you think, how can civil societies can contribute to educating people, and what role can Rotary play in this matter?
Good morning, dear guests and panelists. I'm Julia Molnár, the representative of Rotary Hungary. I'm the immediate past governor of Rotary International District 1911. And it's a great pleasure for me that I can join again to BAISS conference like last year. I enjoyed it a lot and we learned a lot, I think, that we can use in civil society as well. So in the age of artificial intelligence, I think our greatest investment is not really or not only technology, but in people. It is the curiosity of young minds and their international experiences that we can help a lot, and their commitment to service that can shape the future of our societies. As immediate past governor of Rotary District 1911, I can confidently say that Rotary is one of the world's largest community organization that support young people for more than 100 years. For decades, Rotary has empowered teenagers I brought some pictures, if it's possible to show to the audience. I would love to ask our colleague to show it while I introduce all the programs we have in Rotary for supporting young people. Primary schools, we offer early act clubs that are built through the main IDIES of Rotary. It's for teenagers from 12 to 15-year-old students. And also we have special youth clubs for secondary school students. It's Interact club that has many parts of Hungary and all over the world. For example, my daughter arrived to Turkey yesterday to participate on an Interact meeting, which is international, from 15 different countries all over the world. And they will spend 2 weeks together to know each other, to build relationships, and to know each other's culture, and it can help them to be more professional and have stronger leadership skills. Also, university students, we offer Rotaract Club membership, and mentoring is also a very important topic that we can help through our net to be we can organize it more than 80 years in the world, and it's very efficient how we can work and cooperate with young person. Also, RILA, Rotary Young Leader Awards, is a very successful program, not just in Hungary, but all over the world. For Interact students, it means teenagers,
Thank you. Professor Dr. Alex Szalay, you are a distinguished Bloomberg professor, and what do you think, how can we shorten the learning experience from the classrooms to meaningful research without compromising on the academic excellence?
I agree that it has to be substantially shortened. I don't think anybody has any idea how this will happen. So what are the phases? You know, so in the universities or in the whole educational system, we have to deal with the fact, how are we performing the teaching? Today it is still, I see very little difference from the way the Greeks were teaching it. There was an amphitheater, the professor was standing down, the students surrounded, and then he was giving a lecture. Okay, and this is still our current model. So in AI, in an AI-driven world, papers that are written today, half of them will be obsolete in 6 months. So how do I teach a one-semester class at a university when I know that half of the material that I will be teaching will be irrelevant? And then every year I have to create a completely new class from scratch. How do we do the exams? Today, closed book exams are over, basically because we will require from the students to use AI probably to, instead of memorizing all the facts. So that has to be done differently. How do we do essays will be a thing of the past, because most of the essays by the students will be written by AI, probably graded by AI, so it's meaningless. So how do we do research? I don't know. When the AI will be smarter than a Nobel Prize winner, maybe we see the last generation of scientists. We will still have to educate people. So I see kind of high schools as a very important part of giving the fund, or actually up the way to high schools. I think the undergraduate classes are the 4 years of undergraduate study is special, or you know, even 3 years, because that's a transition from childhood to maturity. And it is not so much what we teach, not so much the facts that we teach, but the students are in a community where they start to grow and behave like adults. Okay, and they have to change their behavior, their value system is going to change. So what role the AI, the person-to-person interactions will be still extremely important in that. The graduate school is the one that is going to be impacted the most. The notion of a PhD, the 5-year PhD or whatever, that has to be done in 2 or 3 years, because we spend a lot of the times of the 5 years in just adding incremental specific knowledge. And you know, there's this famous statement, the human brain has a capacity of roughly memorizing about 10,000 documents in our lifetimes with a recall ability. So once we reach that, we are saturated. And the AI can essentially has a limitless recall ability, so we will be using it. University administrators think that, okay, a lot of the tutoring will be done by AI. Okay, professors think that maybe a lot of the running of the university will be taken over by AI. Students will think that, okay, it will be very easy to pass the exams if they are using AI. We will have to redefine what does it mean cheating, for example. It will have a very different meaning in a world where everybody has free access of AI. Or the smart glasses are already showing up in the final exams. You know, that people kind of transmit to their friends through a smart glass, and then it gets beamed back in front of the, I saw one of my colleagues already has seen this. But certain facts must be learned. So I have been teaching for quite a few years to kind of the overarching ideas behind data science and AI. And I was giving a very high-level class which could be attended by anybody who was an undergraduate. And I was able to talk about signal processing, Fourier transforms, you know, central limit theorem, so some of the fundamental principles that connect all the different pieces. After COVID, I had problems because the students who came back, who were in high school during the COVID years, essentially I had to end up teaching high school mathematics. I couldn't even start teaching my class. So there is a revolt in Berkeley. I don't know if you followed. So in the US, many universities dropped the requirement for an SAT, the standardized entrance exam. And then 30% of the Berkeley incoming class cannot pass any of the exams because they don't know enough the basic mathematics. And in this, so there are certain facts that people will, no matter what, they will have to learn, because you think differently. It changes the way you kind of formulate your way of thinking. When you converse with Claude is not going to solve you the problem. You can have a good conversation if you can frame your problem, you set the rules, etc., and then Claude will ask you additional questions. But if you just kind of talk out of the blue, it will be a present conversation, but it will lead nowhere. So, friend of mine, another thought. A friend of mine in Berlin is in the Technische Universität. He is the head of an AI institute there. And what they see is that a whole new class of students want to become computer science majors. They want to learn AI. But what they really want, these are the same people who wanted to do an MBA a few years before. So all they are interested, how do I do something that I can make a lot of money? They don't want to learn Fourier transforms or neural networks or scaling laws. So this will be the society I think we will be dealing with. How will we evaluate the teachers and the professors, those people who are going to do an academic, what will be an academic career? Today we kind of request people to present their CVs, we look at their papers, evaluate the papers and get letters of recommendations. Okay, most of the papers will be written by AI, okay, the wording at least. And probably a lot of the research performed by AI. The letters of recommendation will certainly be written by AI. And when we get for one faculty position 200 applications, then we can only evaluate them by using AI. So what will be the meaning of a scientific promotion? How will we pick the next generation of scientists? I don't know. And I think each of the universities who are investing heavily in AI, they are kind of, I feel, clueless that figure out this brave new world, which will change, I think, every aspect of our life. But especially, in particular, so in academic careers. One last bit. So Gellért Kaplan, one of the co-founders of Anthropic, so he wrote the scaling paper which predicted when will the system be actually intelligent. Okay, so he was a professor in our department, and he came back this spring to give a talk, where he basically outlined that this was before Claude Science. So he said that Claude is good enough to be a graduate student. This year we are going to release a version of Claude that will be as good as you are, essentially, and in another year we will be at Nobel Prize. So I asked that, are we the last generation of scientists? And he said, very probably so. And so question is, how will science exist in this world? Will be the people in the zoo, so we will be the zoo, where people come and watch a few people who kind of do their passion there and live happily in their own little cages? Or will we be the guys who are feeding actually the challenging, interesting problems to the AI that they haven't yet encountered and whet their appetite, that every day we have to produce 10 new problems for the AI to solve? I don't know. It will be somewhere in this space. And like it or not, it will happen.
I was lucky when many years ago I was a demonstrator at the university, and I had to supervise the students writing essays so that they cannot use smart glasses at the time. Dear Anya, you have experience from both the US and from Europe. What do you think? Is there a different approach regarding AI education in universities? Please.
Second BAISS here. Thanks to Balázs for inviting me again, and to NewPush. I would like to just give a very, very short background about me, because whatever I'm saying next, I'm agreeing completely with Professor Szalay here. We have to redefine academia. We have to redefine what research is. I'm a professor at Northeastern, working on cybersecurity and privacy. I am also a visiting professor at ETH Zurich in Switzerland, where we are building products around security. I have lived in Switzerland for over a decade. I have lived in America for about a decade, calling it more or less home. Lived in Germany, worked in Bosch, lived a large part of my childhood in India. So I kind of seen through a lot of these things, and I think Europe has a talent paradox. I think Europe trains a lot of people who go out there and build these companies. And I think everybody misses where the problem starts, and I think it starts at 15. And that's where I believe the problem needs to be fixed. Before I go into all the fixes, I think America is pretty much the world's innovation powerhouse. But it is a surprise that I would say this now, but I think I have enough authority to say this, that it is also one of the most tangled, rule-obsessed societies in the earth. If you want to go register yourself as a new patient in any clinic, it's like filling up a mortgage form. If you want to go to a restaurant with your dog, all the liability clauses kick in. Whether the dog bites somebody, then the restaurant is supposed, so it protects the company. Everything is a very different level of bureaucracy, not something where Europe is used to. Like, it's not rubber stamps, or it's not the layers of things. It's a very different level of liability law, insurance clauses. These are the problems. But still, this is an essay that I have started to write 4 months ago, so I'm kind of referring to it, and I've still not published it because I cannot wrap my head around how to put this together. How is America able to innovate? Why is America a powerhouse? And most of the times what I think is America's innovation is a large workaround. It's a large workaround. Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, all these existed because America's banking system is a mess. It cannot transfer money between one bank to the other without checks, wire transfers, $25 fees, nothing. It's impossible. Europe, India, and China have figured this out very well. And hence there is a workaround. Healthcare startups, we talk about healthcare startups. There are startups for how to move medicine from one place to the other fast in America. That's because healthcare is expensive and is broken there. Europe has an advantage here. And I think that is where and SpaceX. SpaceX exists because the government space program got paralyzed with a whole bunch of processes and things like that. So it's not a system that was designed to innovate, but people stepped in to apply patches to a broken kind of a system there. So, but I have to give America its due. I've thought about it for years, and this is the only thing that I feel is correct. Of course, this is provocative. Feel free to attack me. I think America gets one thing right, and it's that in the US, if you have 10 ideas, all the 10 ideas are awesome, and it will go to the market. The market will decide which is good, which is bad, which is ugly. In Europe, when I propose 10 ideas, 7 of them will get cut at some gatekeeping level by 3 or 4 panelists. 2 of them will get cut at even more levels because someone doesn't like someone. 1 will go into the market. You have Mistral. Just 1. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. This problem of putting everything into the market and let the market decide, this is, in my opinion, America's biggest strength, and you are allowed to fail there. You are really, really allowed to fail there. You will fail there, and you will hit the rock bottom, you will rise up, and you will do another startup, you will fail, you will hit the rock bottom, you will rise up, you will again fail until you hit the golden jackpot. Maybe you will never hit jackpot, but nobody cares. Despite the system not having the nets to catch you. Here in Europe, we have the nets to catch anyone. It's free healthcare. You're not going to lose your insurance. You have a good systemic support. The social ecosystem is fantastic. I moved to Zurich, and I moved to America, and I moved to Zurich back, and now I'm also partially in Budapest and Zurich. So I know how these systems work, and you have a fantastic social ecosystem in which we are not exploiting at all. And I think this is my opinion. I don't think we need to copy the Silicon Valley. I really don't think so. But we can do much, much, much better. The only thing is we have to somehow dare, train the kids to kind of dare to do something, build something, and fail fast. It's okay to fail fast. Move on. Don't restrict them. Because I come from India, my parents, in my generation, where 40, 45 years ago, people were told, if you don't do engineering or doctors, you are not going to make it. I know that generation very well, and I think this is the same mindset that's slowly creeping into the European mindset, which was supposed to be more free. And I think that's where I think you start early. And this I saw when last week I had a cybersecurity and privacy boot camp for 14, 15-year-olds from high school. There were not many people, but I think we gave them, there were 0 prerequisites. They all came. They know AI usage until the 4th day when they already know the fundamentals. We taught them every fundamental. They had to hand code it. They had to refer things. They had to do everything by hand until they learn the fundamentals. Then we introduced AI. Then we asked them to play around with AI and figure out what to build, what not to build. And we taught them how AI fails when you are continuously prompting in such a way that it will leak your passwords and things like that. So we really, really gave them that background as well. And therefore, I believe that teaching kids to fail first starting at 14 or 15, and not, that's the place where I disagree with Professor Szalay, that we might want to compress the timeline. I think we should not compress the timeline. Well, we might compress the timeline, but we should not compress the fundamentals. These fundamentals are not going anywhere. Frequency transforms are not going anywhere. How things happen in the world, how the electrons move is not going anywhere. So I think we need to somehow focus our education back to the fundamentals, tell them how to use, because you cannot just ask them to build using AI, because I've seen that these kids build stuff with AI and it fails miserably and they don't know how to fix. And today, no one knows how to fix the huge amount of AI generated code, even in the biggest companies in the world. And this is what I would say as the two most important takeaways. Start early, allow them to fail. Let's not go too far away from the fundamentals, and that's probably the only way we will hit the next 10 years. Let's not talk about 2 years, 3 years, that's too short line. We want to talk about 10, 15 years from now. How do we keep Europe, Europe?
You are co-founder of the Black Hand program at the University of Óbuda. What makes this program fundamentally different from other educational systems for engineers, and what lessons can other universities adopt?
Thank you so much. My name is Balázs and I represent the Óbuda University. I have more than a decade experience in the IT industry, and I have many years experience in the academic world, and it is so excited to see what different needs are available in these two different worlds. I think it is so interesting and important to find general and common points for the industry and the academic world. And we have to find out some general solutions. And we think that we are doing this one with the Black Hand platform. I don't want to dig into so deep the technical details, but I have to say some words about this platform for the better understanding how it can help in the teaching and the academic world. So what is it? It is an AI-powered distributed execution platform. What does it mean? Let me say one real example. Right now I'm talking about the university environment, but of course it is true for the industry as well. So what's happening during the day at the university? We have so many laboratories, computer laboratories. Of course we are using. There are the lecturers teaching some work, which is so okay. What's happening during the night, for example? We turn off all of the computers and the resources pending. And right now there is the AI, machine learning, deep learning. Of course these are so resourceful tasks. What we are doing? Of course we will pay for the Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and we will use the execution platforms. Why it is a bit problematical? Of course, we will have one financial harm, we can say. Our data can go to the third-party execution platform. Why we are not using our resource? And this is why we designed the Black Hand, to use what we have. So during the night, we can get all of these small resources. And right now I'm talking about literally one computer. It has 8 CPU, 16 gigs RAM. It is enough for nothing. But when we are talking about, for example, 15 laboratories, then actually we can make a small supercomputer. And it is in local, so we can be independent of the third-party company. The data is inside, we can say it is safe, and we can provide this platform for the students. And not just for the students, we can execute our models, our simulations, our resourceful tasks inside the university. We talk about the industry. After that we thought that, okay, it is nice, it is working. But right now, the people maybe don't have enough experience for the programming. And we thought that maybe we can provide some software development kit, SDK, and the people can use the AI for the simulations, models, anything. And I remember we designed this SDK, and we integrated some LLM AI, and we put it to the dean of the university, please try it, and he just wrote that, please write me one simulation from the waves. And it was 3 minutes, and there was one result about the wave simulation. And we don't need any additional knowledge for the programming or writing the code, so we can use it with the AI. And this is the power of this platform. So we can make it speed, we can compress the learning path, and we can make shorter, because we don't need to take care about the, we can say, unnecessary competencies. We don't need, I just want to execute some simulation. I don't need to learn one complete ecosystem. Like we can say the Amazon Web Services. It is a so different job. And then literally there are many engineers who are just working with the Amazon Web Services. Why I have to learn it? Of course, if we are using the backend platform, then it is a big abstraction about the underhood technologies and the hardware components. We just have to concentrate what we want to execute. So in my opinion, we don't need to focus on the unnecessary side tracks, and we can focus on just what we want, and with this mentalism we can reach the builder first pedagogy, and we can literally work on the real life tasks from the first moment. We can skip these side tracks. Thank you.
So mine is a question/comment. So you mentioned the use of AI in production of papers. And one thing that I'm noticing more frequently, I'm on the editorial board of 3 journals, so I've seen a lot of papers coming through. And clearly a lot of papers use AI at the very minimum to polish the paper. So on the other side, reviewers are using AI to review the papers. So there are chances that a paper has been written by AI, goes through a review process where reviewers use AI to review it, and AI reviews tend to be more generous, more lenient, because AI systems have been trained to be polite and to be nice, not to say bad things about anything, and find value in anything you present to them, even if it's wrong. So there are chances that a paper may go from idea to being published without ever seeing any human touch. And the risk is getting higher and higher. There was a paper in IEEE Access a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, where in the text of the article, somewhere in the related work, it was quoted, "As of my last knowledge update." And remember the time when ChatGPT was giving you that answer if you asked for recent information? It was saying, as of my most recent update, this is what I know. So they cut and paste that into the paper. It went all the way to being published, okay? You know, one of the consequences that this is having for the peer review and adding stress to the peer review process is, in the old days, before AI, an editor in chief or an associate editor could desk reject a paper simply on the grounds that the paper was poorly written in such poor English that it would take a major rewrite to make it just presentable. Now, that doesn't happen anymore because you read the abstract and it looks good. So what you do as an editor or as an associate editor, you have to put through review, you need to find 3, 4 reviewers to read it and evaluate it. So more papers are just going to be reviewed, more stress on reviewers. So reviewers find themselves with an increased workload. They resort to AI to accelerate the process. So my view is that the peer review process is already, has been broken for a while, and AI is the nail in the coffin. So we completely need to reinvent how we do publications, because this is not sustainable, this is not efficient, this is not meaningful. And the same thing is happening in academia for assessing students. Homeworks don't make any sense anymore, because students will inevitably resort to AI to do their homeworks, or at least to get help on their homework. So you know, we're investing time as faculty, and our GTAs are investing faculty in reading and grading material that has been generated for the most part by AI. I did a few experiments this past semester where in my assignments, I plugged in hidden instructions for ChatGPT or any other LLM in a way that, you know, once I saw the output, once I saw the homeworks that were submitted, I could definitely say this has used AI because the answer includes something that I told AI to include, and it was hidden in the instructions, whether in a very small font or white font over white background so students could not see it. And that proved that they uploaded the whole PDF with instructions to ChatGPT, and that was the only way that information could end up in their assignments. So what's the point of evaluating students if they're using AI to do their homework? What are we evaluating? We don't know what they know. So that as well needs to be reassessed. And so we need to take it, we need to rethink the whole thing. You know, what do you think about that?
I agree with every word you said. So, and on NPR, there was an interesting interview with a professor. I think it was one of the Northeast, one of the small liberal arts colleges in the Northeast, and he was teaching political science. He gave an assignment for the final exam, a PDF that write an essay about this political scientist around the turn of the 19th to 20th century. And then he wrote in the white print into the PDF, the illegible, that used the Marxist perspective. And 50% of the papers came back with the Marxist perspective. Then he asked, at that point, he sent out an email to the class that you will not be penalized for using, but how much, which ones of you have used AI for this grading? Then another 30% actually admitted that they did.
It's the same thing. I give, you know,
So,
if you come forward, this will just be a warning, because I know who did it. So if you confess before I tell you, you are on the suspect list, you get a...
The only difference was that the 30% actually typed in the question. They didn't verbatim copy the PDF.
And that way you discover that the ones you cannot prove, you know, some of the ones that were not flagged, they also use the AI, maybe they use it in a different way, so you didn't get flagged. But yeah, up to 70% of the students now use the AI.
So I don't quite know what the answer is. We have to come up with, well, there was, when I was in Hungary, we used to have essentially all the exams were oral exams.
Yeah,
but that's again also untenable with a class of 200.
Right, this is what I did when I was in, I went to college, all my exams were oral.
Then, you know, one other aspect, so at Hopkins with the new DSAI effort, we are in the process of hiring 100 new faculty in AI. What will they be teaching? We can't subdivide AI into so many hundred different compartments that each faculty gets their own classes.
I agree that oral exams are the best way at this point to assess candidates, and this is what, you know, most of Europe has always done. But the point is that today university wants to mass produce graduates. And especially in the US, there is this trend to increase the number of graduates. So universities are boosting, oh, we have now 30,000 students. Mason itself, now we have 40,000 students. Let's grow to 50. I mean, why? Why do we need to mass produce? Why don't we point on quality rather than quantity? And I'll tell you one more thing about the use of AI in papers. One time, one of the reviewers who got a paper assigned that I So one of the, authors cited happened to be a reviewer. So bad luck for the others. But I mean, it's pretty common that if you're an associate editor and you try to assign papers to people who work in that domain, so chances are that reviewers are from the list of people cited is not low. But in this case, because the references were hallucinated, it was immediate grounds for rejection.
That I think we have to rethink what are the most important things that we have to emphasize during the education. And I think it's there, but not as prominent as it should be, critical thinking and integrity. So that even though the tools are there to do all the cheating, etc., and also that I have the ability to question everything that the AI tells me.
And what I've been trying to tell students, I mean, I try to turn this into a teaching moment and trying to explain to students that we do allow the use of AI. I mean, our department is working to figure out how we can leverage AI rather than banning, because we don't want to ban it. I mean, it would be like banning calculators when calculators came out. Of course, I mean, you need to know how to get there, but we're not asking you to do the calculation every time by hand. Same thing with AI. So students need to understand that AI is a wonderful tool if used for accelerating learning, but it's not a good tool to replace the assessment. So if we need to assess the students, we need to assess the students. And if we need to assess how students can use AI, that's a different type of assessment. But still, we need to be able to assess what your capabilities and skills are, not how good you are at cheating. Because then eventually you will find yourself in a situation where you have to solve a problem and you don't have AI to help you. And on top of that, some of the homeworks that were produced by AI didn't make any sense, even if, forget about the hidden instructions. But some of the outputs did not make any sense. And they just cut and paste into Canvas without even realizing that what AI produced in that case did not make any sense. So AI is not the holy grail. AI does not have critical thinking skills. I mean, especially LLMs, they're trained on large amounts of text, and they can speak fluently because they've been trained on large amounts of text. They are not always correct. And one live experiments, there are entire YouTube channels of prompts, AI prompts that go terribly wrong. And one I did live in class, just to demonstrate, don't rely on AI to do your homework. First, because it's unethical, and second, because it's not necessarily going to help you. And the demonstration that I did live in class, I asked ChatGPT, one of these interesting prompts. I say, I need to go to the car wash, but it's only a few feet from my house. Should I walk or drive? And he suggested that walking was the best options because it would save me gas, it was faster, it saved me the problem of parking and so on and so forth. So I followed up and say, yes, but then how do I wash my car? And the answer made things even worse because once you get there, they have all the tools, they have the soap, they have everything that you need. Okay, but my car is still at home. So complete lack of critical thinking for something that a human would have immediately say, of course you need to drive the car. I mean, there's no question.
I think this is the argument Jan LeCun is making about the current AI models.
Yes, just one thing to add to the previous question about the scientific publications. So as I see, the importance of journal publications is getting less and less, while self-archiving on archive, most of the best researchers start at archive, just upload the paper. And maybe a few years ago, a very democratic social service was opened off archive, which is basically an additional layer to archive, where people can read the papers, ask questions to the authors, and add a live discussion to each papers. And this is gradually pushing out the traditional peer review procedure, because currently peer-reviewed forums are really hard to evaluate. Some of them is really valuable, but most of the journals currently almost write only. So that is changing radically.
I also think the peer review is dead, pretty much. And my fundamental opinion here is that it's not a new problem. AI did not introduce a new problem. Peer review had its issues since ages, and it has been like slowly having created problems. But as with many things AI did, AI simply amplifies the problems that we already have. It just amplifies the problems the society has, amplifies the problems the education systems has, and at scale and at speed. We are just not able to catch up with how it has identified so many fundamental problems that it already has, and we just couldn't catch up. That's it.
A comment and a question. The comment is, I think it's important to bear in mind that, this is not uniquely a problem for academia. The corporate world is now inundated with AI-driven business cases being read by AI-driven investment panels, and it's the same problem. And I think, some of the funny examples working in innovation is, ChatGPT has a reasonable knowledge of physics, but it has no idea how the innovation works. So it will assess, it will add components, it will add wiring, it comes up with totally crazy Rube Goldberg schemes to try to explain how the existing technology stack delivers whatever the innovator is producing, which it can't see. So we really, we need to be careful about this, not just in academia, but also in real life. And I think part of the lesson for the students is not only is it unethical in university, but it will cause you real problems in your career if you carry this behavior into the workplace. The question, though, is, are we being slightly overly pessimistic? I mean, in 1900, 40% of Americans worked on farms. Now it's less than 1%. My mother was a physics professor, a statistics professor, and insisted that everyone do t-tests by hand in order to learn how it works. I don't know anyone who knows how to do a t-test by hand who's my age or younger. Is this categorically different, or is it just a more extreme version of one of these technology-induced shocks to the labor market?
We are being overly pessimistic. This is, I think, the same shock that introduction of internet gave, same shock that introduction of computers gave, introduction of telephone gave. I think we all will live through it. I don't think it's such a bad thing, or I'm not seeing it as a pessimistic approach, but it's definitely something everybody has to rethink. Every system that we have, from corporate world to education to societal, governmental governance, every system needs to be rethinked, and at a breakneck speed. And that we don't do. As humans, we are extremely slow in change, and that's all.
So, can you hear me? This is Andres Chera. I'm an analyst with Forrester and friend of Balázs. So I look at security for the most part and answer questions from clients on it. To answer the question that you posed here, right? the biggest challenge is quality control and security. So it's not that, are you able to do a T statistics by hand, right? You may be able to do that. The question is, AI did the T statistics. Is this done to the quality that you hoped it was going to be done? And if you're like using AI for probably the biggest, most highest killer use case, software development, are you creating code that's maintainable and secure, right? These are the two questions that, or three questions that come up from our clients.
So in physics, we learned that essentially an equilibrium is established when of the many different time scales that exist in a system, two are becoming equal. That say particles are decaying and then the new particles are generated at the same rate, so that essentially we see the equilibrium. And today the problem is that the AI is changing kind of what in 6 months time scales. And even the industry, academia, nothing happened. We hire faculty for 40 years, careers. So that's unable to respond. But the problem is even the local governments and federal governments have a much longer time scale to be able to respond and create a new regulatory process. It requires the deliberation. Even buying computers, for AI takes, procuring, building a data center is a 2-3 year process. So the whole world is out of equilibrium entirely. And so this also means that if we want to respond to this somehow as a society, we have to speed up the processes that govern our society. And we have to slow down probably the rate of the AI, which is again the Chinese are doing and Eric is suggesting.
Well, thank you for saying that, because it's almost like handing over, and I didn't pay you to say that. It's like our accelerator program with NoéMI is to actually allow industry and allow society to accelerate their knowledge in AI. But Anjan, you said something really interesting about how AI amplifies all our faults, because this conversation, this thought is coming back and back, and I'm actually glad to hear that many smart people think this, that when we have a little flaw as humans, we kind of tend to gloss over to fix it. But with AI amplifying it, we really have to now stop kicking the can down the road. So whether it's what András said about security and the quality control, or whether it's just general data quality control, which we have all these databases where we just said, oh, why do master data management? Humans will figure it out. And Alex, I remember last year you were saying AI doesn't need context as much because AI understands the semantic context better than humans do, right? But still, at the end of the day, humans are the consumption layer. So, is it possible to use AI to improve our quality control, or what do you guys think?
So look at CERN, the big accelerator in Switzerland. So they are collecting in the beamlines incredible amounts of data. But they do so much data that they can't afford. If they actually stored everything, all the CERN budget would go into hard drives. So what they did is that they created simulations of the known physics that we already know. It's in the textbooks. And then they used to implement this in a decision tree in silicon. Now they build generative models. And then every incoming event from the accelerator is going through this generative model. And if in the latent space it's in the known science category, they just throw it away. And they only keep 1 out of 10 million events, and that is still 100 petabytes a year. But so such a way, if we have a well-defined corpus of known knowledge, we can use actually AI to filter what is outside. Sometimes we want to keep actually the outliers because that's where the interesting science may be. You still want to filter out the garbage. And the garbage in, garbage out problem can be actually to some extent mitigated by enforcing rules.
it's so relevant to the real world of infrastructure because, you know, CERN is collecting petabytes in an environment in which it's relatively easy to transmit data. You know, we're doing exactly the same thing in electricity substations with gigabytes when we're transmitting over LTE or 3G. You know, so as we're going to push smart infrastructure to the edge, intelligence, as we're going to push observability and sensing to the edge of our infrastructure, we need to do exactly this to process that data locally in order to bring back intelligence, and AI is the only way to do it. So that model is going to be applied broadly across all of our infrastructures in the next 5 years.
How do we know if AI will make the right decision about what's correct, what's quality data, and what's not?
Or an autoencoder-like architecture or the simple generative models are pretty stable. So at least, you know, if we are staying in the core of the latent space.
Data you're collecting, we would never have had. So, you know, the data we're collecting this way, we would never have had. So even if we don't get all of it or it's not perfect, it's better than zero. Like today we have zero. You know, we have data from oscilloscopes and old accelerators. You know, we have maybe half-hourly measurement of a few parameters in my example with electricity. Like we have no data. So yes, it's not perfect, but it's so much better than what we could have otherwise.
Take any data, then you can't do any science. You take all the data, you go.
And you still can't do any science. You can only do science in the middle.
Okay, yes. So I would turn back to a former question. So I fully agree that AI is an accelerator of things, as it was earlier with internet or telephone or television or whatever else. And I have a totally different question. So we know that the prefrontal cortex of the brain is developing only in the 20s. And we have different researches that young people arrive with a lot of screen time in their life to this age, losing a lot of learning and a lot of things in their life. No communication, no playing, children are sitting at home, they don't go to live social lives and so on. And what I am thinking, we are here, doesn't matter, more or less the same generation. So we are coming from the ages where we were playing on the playground. We were not digital animals. And in this situation, I would ask you that if you are thinking about how to teach people and who will arrive here as experts in AI or in the future, and who will be lost. So who will go to the zoo and who will be our experts. So how do you see it? So who arrives to the university, who will be those excellent students, and so how does it look like nowadays?
Very recent. Last week, as I said, that I was doing a boot camp for cybersecurity and privacy for 15-year-olds. And I want to bring up a story. I agree that we no longer play in the playground, but I also think there are still a lot of students who are absolutely world-class in Hungary. There was a student from Pécs. This kid was telling me how he wanted to badly go to Zurich for his undergraduate studies, but he doesn't have German knowledge. So he started from zero. This is not the language year that Hungary has, you know. So he started from zero, and in 6 months' time, he went to C1. C1. And he just missed the application because he took 2 extra weeks to figure, or he got 3% less in C1 or whatever. And it's not this 6 months that impressed me, that the guy said, I asked him, how did he do that? And he said he went back, he researched how the brain works to study languages. He figured out certain techniques, and he implemented some of these techniques to learn a language fast. For example, he said, if you look at a word, and the first thing that your brain does is to speak out the word there. And apparently, if you speak out the word, it's a different part of the brain, so it doesn't memorize the word. So he trained himself to just look at the word, not speak out the word inside, just photographic memory. And he did it all by himself. He went through the research, he did it, and this is a kid he's a 15-year-old kid. So why I am telling this story is that screen time is bad, but at the same time, I also think it depends on how these kids are being raised and what values one is being put through. So I think we should not really stress too much about screen time and play time and things, because the world is changing. I don't think we can all go back to not using computers for 15 years of our life and then introducing computers and things like that. I think, in my opinion, yes, there needs to be rules, consistent rules as the next generation is being raised. But hardcore banning AI, banning screen time is counterproductive, because there are these kind of kids who use the computers to learn how the brain works, and now the kid is going to Finland to study quantum. So it's very hard to say this is the line that works, this is the line that would not work. It's completely individual.
Yes, but we know that the teenage time is not the best time for making good decisions. So who will explain not to play Roblox, but rather make better things?
Right, exactly. You're talking about the different type of screen time. And the guy was in front of the screen to learn, not to just scroll through Facebook or Instagram. You know, that is what is bad. I mean, because not only because it's a waste of time, but also because there are studies that show that it leads to some kind of addiction. And social media company knows that very well, because their goal is to keep you engaged as long as possible. The longer you stay on the platform, the more ads they can show you, the more money they make. Even if it's bad for you, they don't care. They're there to make money. So the screen time you're talking about, it's a good screen time. And the bottom line is, with every tool, there are good uses, bad uses. You know, there are good uses for the calculator, bad uses. There are good uses for screen time, there are bad uses for, and the same thing is true for AI. So and I think it will, like you said, it's only accelerating or amplifying the problems. We always had sloppy reviewers, but now they are even sloppier because they use AI, and they can be sloppier faster. So I'm perfectly in agreement with you on that one. So the point is, whoever understand how to use AI to improve, to learn faster, they will have an advantage. The people will use AI just to cheat or to do the work quicker without even doing any form of quality control. Those people eventually will remain behind. And I think this will affect overall your critical thinking skills, because what's happening now, if people delegate thinking to a machine, okay, so when you have a problem, your first instinct is to go and ask ChatGPT without even trying yourself to think what could be a solution to that question, but you just go to ChatGPT who has the answer, then it diminishes your ability to think and your ability to think critically. That's a risk with over-reliance on ChatGPT, leading to a convolution of a loss of human intelligence just because we're delegating. Yeah,
it's a magnified risk, right? To that what you mentioned earlier with the calculators, small.
AI affects everything from math to literature to every domain.
Yeah, I mean, we have done it before. I remember in my
My first research job, they gave me a British Library pass, and after the second year, Google was far enough along with Google Scholar, the company stopped paying for the British Library pass. You know, we are going through this. It's just going faster and faster and faster. But I think we have examples from the past we can learn from.
There is also the issue of retraining. I think any acquired corpus of knowledge in the half-life is now getting shorter and shorter. So we have to go through more and more often to actually basically go back to retrain ourselves. And I think it will be more important, the AI will help actually transit to a new territory much easier. But it will be interesting to figure out what is the generic kind of pool of skills that one has to have to be able to actually navigate this world, to be able, with the help of AI, kind of move to a new challenge much easier than before. But it might give us actually a lot more flexibility in terms of careers. So.
I have actually a question for Peter, because you're a vice rector, right, at Óbuda for innovation. But you're also, as a rector, in charge of the education, right? That's one of the main. So there's two big missions in my perception, and correct me please if I'm wrong. One big mission of the university is the students. The second mission, or maybe in Hungary they called it the third mission, is the environment of the university and lifting the environment. So with all this happening, one can have a vertigo. How do you guys manage that? What do you guys do today? Do you want to share some of your plan, or if it's not secret, of how you try to manage in this almost unmanageable situation?
The role of a university is also changing fast. Traditionally, in the medieval ages, universities was also for giving the knowledge, knowledge transition institutions. Then research universities came in the picture, and today some says this is the third generation or fourth generation universities that combines the production of knowledge, the transmission of knowledge, and the purposeful usage of knowledge in the society through innovation, through startups, through spin-offs, whatever. This is a very complex challenge, and let me say in Europe, in Central Eastern Europe, it is even harder challenge because of the mindset and culture. In the US, fairly fast, all ideas should go to the market, and the market should decide which is a good idea or which is a good, who is a good entrepreneur with a good idea, actually, because a good idea without a good entrepreneur will not work. But in Hungary, through the communism, I could not learn from my father how to be an entrepreneur. And in this room, I think there are many people, at least my Hungarian mates here, we could not learn from our fathers and mothers how to be an entrepreneur, because in Hungary there was tricky something at that era when we was kids, and really now in Hungarian university we have to import this mindset, import this knowledge, and recombine it to the traditionally good natural science education, for example. But it was traditionally good. I'm not sure about it today. We have to re-improve the solid foundation in mathematics, physics, and natural sciences, because these knowledge is invariant. Just going back to Zoltán's questions, so what is important? Critical thinking, first of all, reading a lot. A kid somehow should read a lot. Books, on screen, wherever, I don't mind. But this is a principal source of creative thinking. And what is very, very important is abstract mathematics, even in childhood. In first, second, third, fourth grades, elementary school students, they should not only calculate problems in the math class, but they should understand the basics of abstract mathematical thinking. This is the basic of everything. Without that, nobody will understand how AI model works, how the world works, and how to be an entrepreneur, for example. So this is very complex, and in Óbuda University, we try to understand what we can't currently do very well, and import the good approaches, sometimes from abroad, sometimes from great Hungarian minds. There is a saying in Hungary that, sorry to say it, Hungary, a maga hazájában senki sem lehet proféta. So nobody will be a prophet in his or her own country. I understood this, and I try to really import people from neighboring countries, from overseas, from Asia, from America, from Poland, just mention a few, and make this snowball big enough to inspire our students, someone to be a good corporate people, some others to be a good researcher, and some others to be good entrepreneur, and hopefully they can collaborate with each others and lift the things up horizontally, gradually, soon. This is my view about it. Sorry being too abstract. Of course, we have technology transfer company at Óbuda University. We have a venture capital firm at Óbuda University, and we have a distinguished professor program inviting really great minds to the university to mentor PhD students, mentor faculties, involve them in a higher level international think tank, and improve the overall output of the university. Yeah, that's it.
Any more questions? So, no one has any questions? I don't know if it means any consolation for you or not, but some weeks ago I was with the Hungarian Industry Week, and I have to say that not just the students and the reviewers went sloppy, but also the writers as well, because one of the biggest and most important question was more and more writers using AI to create their books, and whether they can have IP rights over the books or not. So sadly, this is the direction. Thank you for your valuable, insightful speeches, and now I think we are looking forward to the...
Thank you. Oh, thank you. I have a voice without that. So now it's time for a short lunch break, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll continue at 1 o'clock. We are waiting for you back here, and lunch is served just right outside this door. Okay? Enjoy.